All right, what up everybody? Scott Brio back again with another tutorial. This one is going to be on how to supercharge your DAW so that you can get a faster and more convenient workflow while also kind of upping your creativity, shaving off little bits of time, but those things matter. They really add up, especially if you're making, music as much as I am, or any producer these days. You are going to be spending a lot of time in your DAW. And so the point is to speed up that workflow while also keeping your creativity at a max and making your DAW kind of have a sound of its own. If you're familiar with old school consoles, they kind of had this sound to them, right? There was a warmth, bit of a saturation, especially when you really pushed the sounds into the preamps and the EQs and the compressors of these desks, which is why, Neves and SSLs and the SSL compressor, they all are very highly touted for their sound. You're never going to make your DAW sound like 100% like an analog console. But what I do want to do is show you how I get Ableton Live to have a bit more of a console sound. Anything that I make in it is going to sound way better and be way more inspiring just because it already sounds good right from the get-go. But before we do that, I want to remind you to give me a like and a subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can see when I post videos. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so that I can monetize my videos. And so every subscribe and like that you give me, and even comment, it all really helps. I've got a ton of ideas of videos that I want to do. Having my videos monetized will make that a lot easier. So we're going to be talking about customizing your default session in Ableton. Now, if you're not familiar, what you can do is you can set up all the things in Ableton that you want down to your key commands, plugins, track settings, meters, visualizers, groove pools, all that stuff. And once you get it set up the way that you like, you can save that as your default in the Ableton preferences. And I know you're probably thinking like how much could that probably help? I'm telling you, this is a game changer. It does take a little bit longer to open your session when you open Ableton at any given time, but having all of those things there have much deeper purposes. For one, it helps you keep using the plugins that you want to be using. I realized a while back that while I like Serum and stuff like that, I tend to use Diva more because it has kind of a more raw analog hardware sound. And for the kind of music that I make, which is, kind of raw tech house type stuff, that's the sound that I want to use more than something like Serum. And of course, you can make any sound with pretty much any synth these days, but it would be silly to say that plugins don't kind of inherently have their own sound to them. So with that in consideration, what I did do is I put Diva in my Ableton default session. And so anytime I open up Ableton to make music, I can see, oh, hey, look, there's Diva. I should use that. So what you're doing is you're kind of tricking your brain into using one particular plugin over the other. And this can kind of help shape your sound overall, especially if you do it with multiple plugins. Let's say you've got 5, right? Those 5 plugins or hardware pieces or whatever it is you want to use, that is your world of sound. And now what you're doing is you're crafting your overall tonal character for your music. All right, so let's flip over here and I will show you a bit more about my Ableton default session. Track colors, labels, groups, external MIDI tracks, and song key. This one's pretty straightforward. For me, having a dark Ableton theme is really important. I spend a lot of time at my computer and I'm constantly looking at screens. And so having something that is dark, I have dark mode on pretty much everything from my browser to my social media to Ableton to Resolve to basically everything. Now, dark mode is life. So make sure to find your favorite default theme because it does make a difference. So what I've got here is I have a bunch of my audio tracks. I've kind of color coordinated them the way that is good for me. It doesn't matter what color they are. It just matters what resonates with your brain and helps you remember what's on any given track. I've given myself a bunch of audio tracks and some MIDI tracks and a resample track here. I've also got the CS80, I've got Diva, I've got the OBXA. This is set up for my hardware. So if I'm going to be using my polyevolver, which is over there, or anything in the MIDI chain here, my Digitone or the TR8S or the Moog, it's all ready to go and I can use it all from this one track. I basically have all of my hardware stuff on 2 MIDI tracks. It's either one which goes out through my Scarlett 18i20 into the Integra 7, the Moog, and the Digitone, or it's 2 which goes through the X Station, the polyevolver, and the TR8S. So I've got chains here just to keep it easy so I'm not constantly thinking about like what is what. And I even made all of them the same MIDI patch number. So chain 1 is MIDI 1 all the way across, and chain 2 is MIDI 1 all the way across. That just means you can use any one of them and just turn the volume down on the ones that you don't need to use. It also means that if you want to stack things, say I want to write a MIDI melody and that goes into my Integra 7, then I can also have it go into the Moog Slim Fatty and into the Digitone, and I can start stacking my hardware synth sounds, which is really, really cool, and you get some really wild results that way. Something else I do here is I don't have it actually saved in this session, which is silly, but I will make a new track and put it at the top here, and I make it dark so it's not standing out. And what I'll do here is I'll put song key equals B flat, right? And so now I can minimize this, and if I ever forget what key the song is, I can just look right up there and be like, ah, the song is in B flat. I'm not super good at music theory, so I have to kind of remind myself sometimes. Now, while we're talking about settings here, I also like to change my BPM. So I put mine up at 123 BPM, just because that's more of what I make versus 120, which is kind of the stock BPM in Ableton. And that one's for you to decide. You know, if you make trap or something or drum and bass, you might want to put it at like 160, 170. But again, these are just little changes that will help speed up your workflow. This one's super helpful. This might be thrown into one of my quick tip videos later, but I want to show you here too. So if you hit Control K in Ableton, what that does is it brings up your key bindings. And what I've done here is if you hit the locator set, which is over here, and you click that, and then you hit M, and then you close your key command bindings. Now, anywhere you drop your marker, you can hit M and you can drop a marker. And that is a super fast way of getting all your markers made. I like to set markers. They really help kind of keep my brain together when I'm making a chaotic song. You can make the key binding whatever you like, but for me, M for markers just kind of makes sense. All right, custom groove pools. This is a good one. So if we go over here to our groove pools and click the button down here, it looks like a couple pieces of bacon. We'll bring up Ableton's groove pool. So when I first started using Ableton, the grooves that it comes with are very good. There are MPC grooves in 8th and 16th notes. They also have, I think it's an MPC 16th note loaded, which I'm not sure what that is. It sounds like it's like an overclocked MPC or something. They also have SP1200 grooves in 8th and 16th note settings. Both of them sound very good, but for me, I found that they didn't quite fit the house music that I make. So what I did was I took the excruciating time to take one of my favorite samplers, which is the SU700. And what I did was I recorded 16th note hi-hat for every step of the way through all 100 groove settings in the SU700. I applied 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. And every time I did that, I recorded another set of 16th note hi-hat. I set all the markers. It was a very painful process. And then what you do is you save that and label it. Once you have done that, I got all 100 of them done, and now what I have is a custom groove pool that's unique to me. For whatever reason, the SU700, the groove that's in it just kind of has a more classic house sound to me. And so that's what I use. And again, this adds to the sound of my DAW. I also put about 5% random on every single groove because I like all of my stuff to have a little bit of random. It just adds to the organicness of the overall sound of your song. And to my own detriment, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put these groove files in my store, which is being worked on now. I am having a friend help me with my new website. As you can see, it is kind of broken, but it's getting there. It's looking pretty good. I will have a store there where you can download. I'll put a link up there, up in that corner. That corner? Oh God. No, anyway, it's up in the corner. And you'll be able to download the SU700 groove pool to use in Ableton yourself. And I am charging a couple bucks for it, but that's just because it literally took me hours to make. And I think it will help you a lot. I'm not asking for much, it's just a couple bucks, and you'll help support the channel and keep things going. That being said, I would recommend that you make your own, right? So if you have a piece of hardware, or maybe you really like Logic's grooves, or you like Bitwig's grooves, I would take the time to learn how to do that and make your own. It's also something to think about. What kind of music do you make? For me, I make tech house. And so I wanted to use something that was kind of frequently used in tech house music. If you want to make music like Depeche Mode or something, you probably want to use the KR55 drum machine that they had. It's all these little things that really add up to the bigger picture, especially if you want to make authentic music like cover songs. All right, moving on to custom Ableton effects racks. All right, so when you're making music and you've got a whole stack of effects that you really like, what you want to do is save those in an effects rack. And by doing that, you can save that and put that in your favorites folder. So then what you do is you'll have, like for instance here, I've got Brio preset devices. And what I've got here is a whole bunch of different presets in Ableton effects racks that I've made in previous sessions. And you can just drag it down, and now you've got a whole effects rack that is kind of a signature sound of your own. This is super handy and it makes things super fast. So real quick, I'll show you how I do that. Let's go up here and let's just throw some stuff in here. We'll go EQ3, we'll do a drum bus, maybe we'll do a chorus, and let's do an auto pan. And what you can do is you can just highlight all of those. I hit Control G on PC. What it does is it pops all of them into an Ableton effects rack for you. And from there, what you want to do is name it Brio's Super Cool Effects Chain, and then you hit the save button, and what that will do is it'll go into your user library, and from there you can go in and right click and put it into your favorites preset folder. Sound banks and MIDI clips. So I think most people have Ableton set up, you know, with their usual places that they go to, their user library, and then all of their, you know, drum kits and sample packs and that sort of thing. Very good thing to do. But what I like to do is I also like to put a folder here called MIDI clips. And as I'm making music, if I come up with like a cool hi-hat riff or maybe a good synth riff, a nice melody, what I'll do is I will save that and throw that into the MIDI clips folder. And I like to have it fairly organized. This one's particularly not all that organized, but I'm still kind of adding to it. As you can see, I've got chord progressions here, and as I go, I will add those in there. And so then, you know, if I'm making a song in the future, I can be like, oh, gee, I want like a hi-hat pattern. So I'll just take that, drag it in, slap it on there, and it just adds to your sound and kind of cuts out a little bit of time. You can also do this with your own sounds. I've got one called Brio Sounds. This is entirely categorized sounds that I have made, from drum hits to one-shots to piano sounds. These are all just bits that I can grab. So as I'm making songs, I can grab something from an older track and it's already categorized. You know, I've seen some other producers and they'll just go into their previous Ableton sessions. That definitely works, but for me, I like to have it organized in advance. So I don't have to remember, oh yeah, that one song, I had this cool synth part. I like to have it already categorized so I can be like, I need some keys. Go into the keys folder, see what I got. Does it fit? Sure, drag it in, cool. Supersends and parallel compression on return tracks. So I was watching a video on YouTube by Sonic Academy many years ago, and there's a really great video on what they called supersends. Supersends are return tracks that have effects chains on them, like I just showed you how to make, saved into an Ableton effects rack, and they're already in place on your return tracks with your default session. So for me, if you look at my return tracks, I've got FabFilter Pro R, so I've got a nice reverb. The second one, return B, is parallel compression. So as I'm mixing, and especially in the mastering phase, I master my own stuff, what I like to do is have parallel compression on a return. So if I need something to stand out in the mix a little bit, all I have to do is go to that track and dial up the send, and boom, I'm getting parallel compression on that sound. And it really helps with the mixing process, being able to bring things forward like vocals or maybe the kick or the snare, something like that. And for my third return, I have my supersend, which is saved as Brio's supersend. It's got an echo device, a reverb, a grain delay, and a flanger. And as you're making music, you don't have to think like, oh gee, it would be really cool if I had this a big wild effect that I could throw on something. You can just go to your sends, crank that up, and it'll fly into your custom effects rack, and boom, you've got a sick breakdown or something like that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I've got a drum loop right here, and we're just gonna pretend that this is a part of my song and it's leading into the breakdown. So what I'll do here is I will hit A on my keyboard and bring up the automation. You can go to mixer, you can go to send C, which is our super sends. You can just write in a bit of automation to ramp up here and send that drum sound into the super send and get this really, really cool swell effect. So check it out. So there you go. You can see how that would be really, really helpful. Again, it just adds to the overall character of your DAW and really makes it sound unique to you. And if you want to hear the parallel compression, go ahead and turn this off, swing over here to our track. I'm going to dial up the parallel compression, and you can just listen to it and you can hear how it kind of thickens the sound. And so it does just kind of make it sound like it's getting louder. But what it's doing is it's adding parallel compression on a return. So you're getting the overall dynamics of the original track while also getting the super squished compressed version on your return track. And those are mixed together before they go out to your master track. If you're not using parallel compression and mixing, I would highly, highly recommend it. You do want to use it very sparingly, but it is an essential tool for getting a nice thick mix. Airwindows Console 7. So this one is the real secret, and well, I should say part 1 of 2 to the real secret and mojo of supercharging your DAW and giving it a custom sound. Airwindows is a series of plugins that Chris over at Airwindows makes. They're all very, very minimalistic plugins. So they have practically no graphical user interface. If you throw it onto a track, it really doesn't look like much. So here's the channel plugin, and that's it. I mean, really, that's it. You click the little arrow here and it brings up a little fader. All that's doing is that is the fader for the channel send of Console 7. Now you gotta imagine sending sound into an analog console, right? So as you bring the fader down, what it's doing is it's saturating it less. And as you bring the fader up, it's saturating it further. So what that does is it kind of makes that sound stick out in the mix a little bit more. And so it's adding a bit of a 3-dimensionality to the mixing process, which is really, really cool. And it sounds incredible. The people over at Gear Sluts in the Console 7 thread were essentially saying that they were going to ditch their high-end consoles just because Console 7 is so easy to use and sounds so great. And that was kind of what did it for me. I was like, all right, if these guys are willing to get rid of their fancy consoles because this thing sounds so good, it's probably good enough for me. And it's free. I think it's donationware. You might want to donate if Chris is accepting donations, because plugins are really fantastic and I highly recommend supporting them. So anyway, that is the Console 7 channel plugin. And as you can see here, what I've got it set up to do is I have a Ableton effects rack set up so that this knob here controls the fader in Console 7 channel, just because it makes it easier than having to click into the arrow. So I can keep this closed and just dial this up there. Makes it really convenient. So what you do is I've essentially set up one of the Console 7 channel tracks on every single channel in my session. What that does is all of those send to the master track, and on the master track, for the channel tracks, what you want to do is you want to put it at the very end of your audio chain, right? So you have all your plugins first, and then you have the Console 7 channel, and then on your master, you want to have the Console 7 bus plugin, and that goes before all of your mastering chain. With the bus plugin, you can adjust the volume here. I think it's around like 700, I think it's around 0.77 or something like that is the unity gain. Again, Console 7 is free and you can add it to your Ableton default template session, and that's gonna really supercharge your overall sound of everything that you're feeding through it. If you're familiar with Harrison Mixbus, it makes it sound kind of like that, which is really cool because Harrison Mixbus sounds incredible, but it's also not Ableton, right? So you get all the functionality of Ableton with the overall sound and saturation that something like Harrison Mixbus is going to give you. All right, so now we're going to cover the master channel and the meters. All right, so we already covered the Console 7 plugin being the first in the chain on our master channel. What I've got next is a utility plugin, and that is just so I can make the bass mono or make gain adjustments. What is next is what's going to add to your sound a lot as well. I've got Slate virtual tape machines. This is a fantastic plugin. I really don't even make any adjustments to it. I just leave it on and close it, and it just makes everything sound better. It really does. From a simple drum loop to a full mix to your final master track. Having Console 7 and then the virtual tape machines in your default Ableton session really makes Ableton sound fantastic and very, very different, much better in my opinion than standard Ableton. Now, I've also got WLM Loudness Meter on the master chain, and that's at the end. And this is a plugin by Waves. Kind of an older plugin. What it is it's a LUFS meter that has a true peak limiter in it. And LUFS are a way of reading your overall loudness of the song in a much more accurate way than just reading the decibels. It's a very handy thing to have to make sure all of your songs are of commercial loudness. But what really got me about this plugin is the true peak limiter. And you can turn it on right here. You can make some gain adjustments, but I really, again, it's a set it and forget it thing for me. So I just leave it on. And what this is doing is it's catching any of the peaks that might make it past your limiters or your compressors. I don't know how to describe it, but this thing just has a sound. It kind of gives my songs a little bit more of a radio-y sound. And I know that's silly to say, it sounds like the radio, but it just does. It's really not doing much. It's just catching 1 decibel here and there, but it's got a sound to it, and I swear by it. So it's on every track. It's in my Ableton default session. It's a fantastic plugin. I would highly recommend checking it out. And from there, I've got Span Plus at the very end, as well as the Klanghelm VUMT VU. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Span is a great plugin just to watch the correlation meter, make sure you don't have any phasing. It doesn't have a sound, but it's a really, really accurate plugin, and it looks really good. And watching that phase correlation definitely helps with making an accurate mix that sums to mono. The VUMT meters are just nice looking meters. They react very well. They look great. I've got those in one of my other windows. Again, they don't really have a sound, but they really just kind of like add to the feel while I'm making music. So there you have it. That is how I supercharge Ableton to make music faster, make it sound better, make it more creative, and just make it more fun in general. Having a unique default Ableton session with your grooves, console, and tape plugins, having all of your tracks organized, all this stuff shaves off seconds throughout your day and really kind of saves you time and makes the process faster. But of course, I implore you to use your own plugins, do what I've done here, but make your DAW, whatever it is you're using, yours. Save that as a default and have your own sound. And don't forget to download my SU700 groove files. There'll be a link in the description below for that. If you like what I'm doing here, give me a like and subscribe down below. Hit that notification bell so you can see when I post videos. And thank you for tuning in. This has been a good one. I hope this has been helpful for you. I am Scott Brio, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.